They'll lynch you, but he did, and he laughs at
Hello, West Ham Network, it's Holly, and today we're going to be talking about the goalkeeper situation at West Ham. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, give that button a little click so you never have to miss out on the latest news. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up as well. So, for today's debate, in case you haven't seen it, Fabianski spoke to Canal Plus about being dropped in the first Premier League game of the season. As we all saw against Bournemouth, Areola started ahead of him, and following on from a pretty successful season, it's clear that Fabianski was disappointed to have lost his place, particularly when he hasn't really made a specific error leading to that decision. He also made the fourth most saves in the Premier League last season, beaten only by Raya, Leno and Pickford, as well as tying with Alisson with a total of 108 saves in the league, which is pretty impressive. So in the interview, Fabianski spoke about how badly he'd taken the news and also mentioned that it wasn't expected for him. The main point he brought up was the handling of the situation, making it sound as though he'd basically been told last minute that he wasn't actually going to be our first choice goalkeeper. Now, you can see the full quote in the tweet here, a little bit small, from West Ham Network, but essentially he said that he feels after all of his hard work with the club that he deserved for the situation to be dealt with differently to how it was. Also, if you've not followed the West Ham Network's Twitter, or X as it's now called, in fact, make sure you do, because it's full of updates and will help you stay up to date with everything that's going on. Now, from what I can gather, Fabianski would of course be disappointed to not be first choice anymore. It sounds like he's actually most frustrated though with the lack of communication around this decision, which, if that is correct, should have been approached differently after the amazing work that he's done at the club. So to have found out last minute that he'd lost his place would have been really bad man management. And if that is the case, I definitely feel for him. There's been that ongoing debate, as we know, over whether we should start Fabianski or Areola, and it does appear that the decision has now been made to help us work towards the future, which definitely needed doing at some point. But let us know in the comments if you think that the right decision has been made. So when I actually asked this question on Twitter yesterday, 83% of people said that they would have chosen Areola over Fabianski this season, and that's definitely something that I agree with. But while Fabianski has done a brilliant job for us, many have questioned things like his distribution, which is something that Areola is thought to be better at. But of course, it doesn't make the transition any easier. It's not going to make the news any easier for Fabianski, as we were saying, especially if it's not been communicated well. That said, there was also the penalty shootout where Areola went the wrong way for every penalty, and people then began to say, oh, maybe Fabianski is a better choice. So both of them are fantastic keepers. Each of them has their own strengths. And yeah, Fabianski's done a wonderful job in the Premier League, despite being under a lot of pressure and scrutiny at times. And Areola did a great job for us in the Conference League campaign. In fact, a couple of seasons ago, it seemed like a no-brainer that Areola was going to naturally step into the number one spot and replace Fabianski. But then Fabianski's performances have just continued to be pretty consistent, and he's made it nearly impossible to find a reason to actually make that change. And usually when you do swap your number one and number two keeper, there's like a specific moment or error that has cost the team that you can put it down to. So this is kind of like a more of a long-term change that needed to happen. And it was inevitable at some point that it did have to happen, seeing as Fabianski is now 38 and Areola has been very patient. But Areola will have to go somewhere else soon if he doesn't start being selected. It doesn't make any sense for someone of his talent to just sort of sit on a bench knowing that he's only ever going to get European football. And that's obviously providing we're in Europe next season. So Areola is contracted to play for us until the summer of 2027, while Fabianski recently had a one-year extension to his contract triggered. So essentially his contract is running out. But for the future, it definitely looks as though now is the time for Areola to step up and show what he can do in the Premier League. He's just far too talented for us to let him go. And we've seen how difficult it can be to actually find a goalkeeper that is somewhat reliable, fits into your squad, that you can fall back on. So it would be crazy to let Areola go just for the sake of one more season with Fabianski, when we know that give it 2, 3, 4 years, it's not going to be possible for him to be playing at a Premier League standard unless there's some kind of miracle that happens. So what are your thoughts with goalkeepers? Have we made this change at the right time? And what is your take on the situation and how it's been dealt with by the sounds of things? So in my opinion, for me, it seems such a shame if we haven't communicated our intentions clearly, tempted Fabianski to basically stay for another year and then casually just mention, oh, by the way, you're not going to be our first choice goalkeeper anymore, because that could have been so easily avoided. And he seems like a reasonable enough guy that he would have taken it well if he was given the right warning, the right notice. No one's going to be excited to hear that they're being dropped, but I don't think it's sort of unfair or unusual. And I think he probably knew it was coming at some point. But yeah, with the service he's given to the club, he definitely deserved the communication side of it. And once again, it sounds like another just issue in terms of man management and talking to people and setting out expectations before it's kind of forced upon someone, because I think that would make a big difference morale wise and just for everything in the team, really. So let us know what you think in the comments. Is now the right time to make Fabianski our second choice? That is all from me for now. Tune in later for your Hammers headlines, where I'm going to be running through today's top stories. We've got constant news, constantly changing, so it's going to be a good one, I'm sure. And until next time, have a great one. Make sure you subscribe, of course, and come on, you Irons. Bye.